What's going on, everybody? Here we are on a Wednesday, which means it's Q&A day. Now, it's not just any Wednesday. It is the day before students return Wednesday. Yes, tomorrow, students return, and I will be back at the full-time teaching job. So it will be interesting as I start my 23rd year of teaching. I know I look older than I really am. My wisdom that is shown in my gray hair does make it seem like I look older than the 45 years that I have been on the planet. But nonetheless, we will be off and running tomorrow. Now, before we get into this week's questions, I did want to share with you a couple of awesome things that have been sent to me recently. My buddy Brent sent me this awesome Greg Nettles autograph card. Brent, a longtime viewer, good buddy of mine, also recently started posting videos and making videos of his own. I'll put a link to his channel down below in the description. Great guy, check out his channel. And then Ben sent me this sweet Greg Nettles, Mike Schmidt home run leaders card in an SGC 7, and it's an O-Peachy, which makes it even cooler. I didn't have this card. I have it in a Topps, but not in O-Peachy. So that was super cool. Thank you, Ben. And then Jim sent me a bunch of pins. Check these out. He's like a pin guy. And if you're interested, I'll flash the information on the screen. He does them on eBay, and on the screen you will see his eBay username. So those were very cool. And then Eric sent me this book. Now, the cool thing about this book is, and I'm not familiar with the story of Lou Brissy, but he is a war hero. And then he sent me his 1950 Bowman card. He said to be as a bookmark, but it's a really nice card. So I don't think I'm going to be using it as a bookmark, but I look forward to reading this. I am all about, I have an absolute special place in my heart for all of the heroes that served our country and the ones that went through that and then either interrupted their careers or re-entered their career as a professional athlete. I love those guys. A lot of them out there. Yogi Berra is one. Warren Spahn is one. Bob Feller. There are many that served our country. And Ted Williams. Many. That's a long list. That said, thank you for the book. I look forward to reading more about his story. If you have a question for an upcoming episode, simply down in the comments below, just type out your question and I'll add it to the list, and I will slowly work my way through them, and it will be featured on an upcoming episode. So if there's anything you want my opinion on, don't hesitate. I look forward to, and I'm actually, to be totally honest with you, I genuinely get honored when somebody asks my opinion on something. So it's not a bother, it's a compliment when people do it. So thank you to those that have, and I look forward to more questions coming my way, hopefully from you all down below in the comments. That said, let's take a look at this week's first question. Greg, another great video. My question is, now that you've obtained your Grail card, the 1954 banks, what now becomes your new Grail card? Great question. And yes, I am thrilled to have picked up my 54 Topps banks, which I've been talking about to you all since my channel started. And I've been talking to my dad about since I was about 12 or 13 years old, over 30 years ago. Now, to me, the term Grail, I know a lot of people get frustrated when people say the term Grail card. A Grail card to some is a card that is way outside of what seems realistic, something that you long for many, many years and is unlikely to happen. For a lot of us, it might be like the 52 Topps Mantle, would be a Grail card, because it's probably not going to happen for many of us. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely, and it's something that we long for and look towards as really wanting. Now, when I was a 12 or 13-year-old kid, the 54 Topps Ernie Banks was a legitimate Grail card. I would go to card shows, and I spent a lot of my time literally going through quarter boxes. You know, I would go and there would be these 4-row boxes, and they would be separated by player. I would find the section on Clemens. I would go through every single one, and I would pull out the ones that I didn't already have, and I'd buy them for $0.25 a piece. I did the same thing with Larry Bird cards, except there weren't a lot of quarter Larry Bird cards at the time. And at the time, basketball cards were a little bit harder to come by. But I put together a full run of Clemens cards and Larry Bird cards. That's where I spent my attention. I didn't spend my attention and my money. The thought of saving up to buy an Ernie Banks rookie just seemed unfathomable. And that's why I considered it a Grail card and have for many, many years. So to answer your question, the term Grail, again, makes me feel like what's kind of unrealistic, but not impossible. Now, a goal card, a card that I've wanted for a very long time, one of the key cards I've wanted is that 1948 Bowman Yogi Berra rookie card. And I've wanted that. Would I consider that a Grail? No, I'd consider it a goal. I think it's a realistic goal. It's a card that I'd really like to obtain. But the card that seems kind of a little out of reach and is not likely to happen, that I want, that to me is a Grail. And that would be the 48-49 Leaf Jackie Robinson. You know, that card I've had so many variety of opinions on over the years. I feel like there have been times where I'm like, it's kind of not the greatest image. And then there have been times like right now where I think it's an incredible image. And my mind has changed on that. But what that card represents is so much more than just a card. It goes beyond what is a baseball card. You know, it goes into a historical event in which it represents. So that would be the card right now, that now moving forward, I would love to get one of those. Now, does it need to be an 8? Absolutely not. It won't be an 8. I just want a centered one. I want a centered 1949 Leaf Jackie Robinson. It'll probably never happen. You know, I'm a teacher. My budget is not big. I'm just a normal guy. And that's what makes it a Grail. Again, the Grail is the thing that seems like it's always just out of reach and unlikely to happen. So to answer your question, that would be my current Grail, a centered 1949 Leaf Jackie Robinson. Will it happen? Maybe, but I think it's fairly unlikely.
Greg, I'm a Clemens guy too. He was my favorite player back in the day, and I patterned my signature after his. I do have a question. We talk and hear about eye appeal versus condition. Do you think you or other collectors focus more on eye appeal when you're at a show and holding cards, while the opposite is true in buying online, focusing more on condition and slightly less on eye appeal?
So I never know how I'm going to answer some of your questions and give my opinion on your questions until I'm at the moment where I'm actually doing it. And here I am. I think that this is a really, really interesting and intriguing question on does the eye appeal matter more when we're in person, or does the eye appeal matter less when it's online? And the question kind of alludes to it might matter more in person than online. Now, let me first back up and say this. The reason I think that grading as a whole is not a bad thing for the hobby is because of the peace of mind it allows people to have when they're buying cards online. If you're buying a card that is graded in an 8, whatever the card may be, but you buy a card in an 8 and you see it on a picture online, you can feel pretty safe knowing it doesn't have a crease. It doesn't have a pinhole. It doesn't have paper loss, even if the image isn't great, because according to the standards of the different grading companies, it can't have those things and receive a grade that high. So it gives people peace of mind. Now imagine a world in that there's no grading, and a card comes online like a 1915 Cracker Jack Joe Jackson. And that card comes up for auction and it's not graded. And you're just bidding on it. It would be really, really hard to bid the amount of money it would take in order to win the auction and get the card and still have peace of mind that you're getting what you think you're getting. Wouldn't it? Versus if it's in a 7 holder or an 8 holder, the type of card my pal Dave would potentially go after, then I would feel so much, oh yeah, it's definitely going to be as nice as it looks because it's already been under heavy magnification. Graders have already checked it out. It's already been slabbed. I have a guarantee of it's what it is, that it's authentic. That would be so much easier. So I'll start by saying that evolution in collecting, I think, has overall been a good thing. Now, it's not a perfect thing. It's certainly not a perfect thing, but it does provide an assurance for long distance transactions. Now, when I'm looking at a card online, I am looking at a 3-dimensional object in 2D, right? I can only see up and down, left and right of the card with the image. And so when you're looking at the picture, all you can really see is the eye appeal. You can only see how it looks from a distance in 2D. But when you're in person, you can get that card as close or as far as you want. You can use the light to see the surface. You can see the front and the back so much better. You can see the 3-dimensional object in 3 dimension. You can see if it has surface issues, if it has dents, if it has wrinkles, if it has creases, if it has pinholes, if it has snowing. You can see those things so much better. So to be honest with you, to be totally honest, I think that I am more about eye appeal when I'm looking at a card online in a picture, because all I can see is the eye appeal. I can't see beyond just the 2 dimensions. Now, as cards get more expensive, as I'm picking up big cards, I mean, one of the reasons I didn't think I'd ever pick up the Ernie Banks card is because I didn't think that I would ever feel comfortable buying one online, because that's a lot of money to spend. And I'm not going to buy an 8 or a 9. That's out of my price range. And then if you're in the 4 or 5 range, there could be hidden items on the card that you don't see until you get it. So I would have to have found it in person so I could really get a good look at it. So I don't know how others would answer it, but for me personally, I kind of feel like the eye appeal is the only thing I can tell when buying online, and I can see more about the hidden, potentially hidden or hard to see aspects of a card in person that might turn me off to a card that, looking at the 2-dimensional picture online, I wouldn't see, and so I could potentially buy it. So I think the eye appeal, so I don't know how I'm answering this question. if it makes any sense. I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense, but I think that when I'm in person, I see things that I don't see online, and it makes it more difficult for me to actually make a purchase because I find more. Whereas online, I'm just looking at the eye appeal, and I'm more likely to say, yeah, that one looks pretty good, because I can't find more things that might create an issue and prevent me from buying it.
What was the best piece of advice that you received in the card hobby? How has this influenced your collecting experience?
Now, this seems like a very simple question. It seems like a question that would have a very simple answer. But knowing me, it really doesn't. It doesn't, because I think there are so many different pieces of advice that matter. For example, I think buying cards you actually like, I actually think that matters. Now, buying cards that you like may not mean that you're buying cards that have a lot of long-term upward potential. You might like the looks of the, 1988 Topps baseball set. That might be something you like the looks of, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's something you should spend all your money on, because it's probably not got a ton of upward possibility in value. So I think that, for example, finding cards that you like, but also are liked by others, is important, because that allows you to buy cards that probably have lasting value. If you're the only person that likes a card, right? If you're the only person, it's going to be hard to sell it someday, because nobody else wants it. You're the guy that wanted it. Nobody else wants it. So I do think that that's a good piece of advice. A good piece of advice is buy what you like, but because what you don't want to do is you don't want to buy a bunch of stuff you don't like just because other people like it. There are enough things out there that I feel like you can buy things that you like that also others like. And it's not like, it's not like buying a pair of shoes that others like, but you hate. It's buying something that you like that others also like, because then if you decide you don't want it anymore, it's liquid and it's easier to sell. If you're the only guy that wants it, it's going to be really hard to sell it. Back to the whole analogy of buying the house on the busy street that doesn't bother you, but it bothers everyone else, which is the reason that you got such a good deal on it. Now, that's not my pick, though. My pick would be buy cards that have good eye appeal. And what does that even mean? My buddy Mookie, when he was on my channel the other day, he says, what does eye appeal mean? That was one of his questions to me. Remember when I was doing my 20 questions on the clock, and all of his questions were like 2 and 3 part questions, like who are 3 overrated players? And I'm suddenly answering 60 questions, and then we couldn't figure out why I couldn't finish in 5 minutes. Remember that? Well, thanks, Mook. But the whole thing of buy the card, not the grade, which also I think means buy cards with eye appeal. And what does eye appeal mean? Back to that point, that question that Mookie asked, one of the fair questions that he asked was, well, a card that doesn't have anything distracting about it. When you're looking at a card, what the focus of the card should be is the card. If there is a big print mark on his face, and you look at the card, and anyone that looks at the card is like, oh, what's that on his face? That's not high eye appeal. If a card is off center enough that somebody looks at it and they see, whoa, that thing's way off center, that's not high eye appeal. If you look at a card that has a fat crease through nose, and you pick up the card and it's the first thing you see, that's not high eye appeal. Picking up a card with high eye appeal is a card that will always be desired. Now, there are definitely some really nice cards out there. Let's say the 1952 Topps Jackie Robinson. Now, a lot of people would love to have that card. But there are some that have condition issues that people would say, I don't want that one. I'd rather wait. I don't want that one. But if a card that has high eye appeal, if somebody wanted that card and they saw that example, then they said, there's nothing there to make them go, I can't live with that centering. I can't live with that crease. I can't live with that stain. I can't live with that mark. I can't live with that paper loss. All of those sorts of things are low eye appeal items that could prevent somebody from buying it. But when you look at a card that has good eye appeal, and there's nothing glaringly obvious about an objection that a fair amount of people would have about the card, I would say buy cards like that. I watched a lot of videos on people's pickups at the National. I think a lot of people picked up a lot of great stuff. I have a lot of friends that picked up a lot of great stuff. And some of them picked up cards that don't fit my eye. They wouldn't be cards that I would have bought. Now, does that mean that I'm a better collector than them? No, not at all. They might have different requirements for what they want. Some people just want to have the card. The condition isn't that important to them. They just want to own one. I want to own one that when people look at it, they don't go, oh yeah, it'd be nice except for this. Oh, I would love to live in this house if it wasn't for the street noise. That's the sort of thing that I would recommend. Buy cards that you like, that other people are going to like because it has good eye appeal. I think it's going to matter more and more. For a long, long time, the grade has been the number one thing. It's been the most important thing, is the grade for a lot of people. Like, I want to get it in at least in a 7. I don't want to buy that card in a 6. Why would I want to buy a 7? And a lot of that was dictated by the PSA set registry. And a lot of that was based on the consistency of PSA grading. But as the consistency has wavered, as a lot of people are not relying on PSA cards, therefore not really competing in the PSA set registry. I mean, the rise of SGC and SGC really coming on the scene and competing with PSA has been a major factor in the grade mattering less. Now, the reason for that is because a lot of the reason people cared about the grade is because of the set registry. But if a lot of people are buying SGC stuff and they're not buying PSA for the set registry, and you're not competing on the set registry, then the grade doesn't matter as much. Not to mention the fact that SGC does tend to hurt grade scores more on low eye appeal cards than high eye appeal cards. The card that might have an issue but have high eye appeal, it tends to have a more generous score than a sharp card that has some low eye appeal components to it. I think that's effective. I think SGC has really helped collectors not rely on the number as much. I really think that they have. just my take. So the one piece of advice I would say is don't worry about the grade. Worry about the eye appeal. High eye appeal is so much more important than a high grade, in my opinion. Doesn't make it right. There are people out there that disagree with me. There are people out there that have already hit the thumbs down button, which I don't understand hitting the thumbs down button, by the way. If you don't like the video, if you don't like what I'm saying, just turn it off. Why hit the thumbs down button? I don't know. Whatever. That's my take. That's the advice I think is the best advice.
Hi, Greg. With the National being in the Illinois area over the next 3 years, could you see this as an opportunity for Fanatics FanFest being able to gain ground by going to multiple areas throughout the U.S., whereas the National generally stays in just the same few locations? Would love to hear your thoughts and if you would attend the FanFest event for the experience of it, eventually if it comes to your neck of the woods. Thank you.
All right, Andrew, I think this is a great question, but I think I might surprise you with my answer. I don't really think that part of the goal of the National should be to tour the country to create awareness for collectors to grow the hobby. I don't think that's part of what the National is meant to be. I think that the National is meant to be a place that people can all access easily, can get to easily, a facility big enough to house a large event with lots of hotels and lots of restaurants nearby. I don't think it's like Barnum and Bailey's circus that is tours the country to help promote circuses. I don't think it's like a traveling exhibit from the Smithsonian that's like PR for the Smithsonian. I think that's not their job. The job of the National, in my opinion, is to put on an event that is easily accessible. Now, it's not easy to fly into Cleveland. It's not easy to drive into the IX Center in Cleveland. It's not easy to find a good hotel in Cleveland. Now, no offense to Cleveland. I mean, sure, it's a fine town, but the infrastructure, it's sort of like when they do the Olympics, right? When they do the Olympics and different cities are making bids for the Olympics, one of the things they have to show is that they have the infrastructure to host the event, to host all of the different things that are required to host, including the highways and the mass transit and the hotels and the restaurants and all of that sorts of stuff. That's why it's usually a very big city that hosts the Olympics. They don't host it in a small town because it can't handle it. I think that's the job of the National. If people are going to show up at the National, they're going to show up. So it should be the place that's close to the dealers so they're not having to travel. I mean, I would love for them to have the National in San Francisco again, like they did years and years ago. Or even LA. I mean, it's kind of annoying for us on the West Coast. There's some big cities out here. Seattle could handle it. San Francisco, LA could handle it. Portland could probably handle it. Las Vegas could handle it. But they don't put it out here because it's inconvenient for the majority of the patrons and dealers. And I get that. I understand it. It makes sense. Why have, if 80% of the attendees are on the East Coast, why have it on the West Coast? I'd love to have it on the West Coast, but it doesn't make sense to have it on the West Coast. It should be somewhere central that has the hotels, that has a big airport. Denver, I think, could work. Denver has a big airport. Denver is easy to fly in and out of. Denver has lots of hotels, and it's a big town with lots of infrastructure in and out of that area. That would work. Chicago would work. Those both kind of make sense because they're somewhat central. I think Dallas could maybe work. It should be somewhere that's easy for people all over the country to get to. I don't think it's about a tour and, oh, if we have it in Florida, then Florida, the card collecting community is going to grow. I don't think that's what the National does. I don't think it grows the local interest in the hobby. Fanatics, I don't think, is a competitor with the National either. Fanatics FanFest, now they haven't had one, so we don't really know what it's going to be, but I get the impression it's going to be more of a fan experience than it is a card collecting event. The National is a card collecting event. Fanatics is doing this to help Fanatics. And Fanatics is tops, but Fanatics is also jerseys, pro sport team paraphernalia, shirts, sweatshirts. It's going to be something different than a card event. And the National is a card event. The Fanatics FanFest is going to be ways to make people more interested in Fanatics-owned intellectual property. And that's not the point of the National. The point of the National is where can we get all the dealers and where can we get all the collectors? And the easier, the better. And I think having it in Chicago a lot makes a lot of sense. And that's coming from a guy that lives nowhere near Chicago. But that, again, is just my take.
Question for next week. What are your thoughts on the Diamond Sticker program from NBA, Mike Baker Authenticated? I have seen a few cards with the sticker, and it seems to bring a sizable premium. Is it a legitimate premium to add to the value of the card to allegedly have a card in the top % of those graded in that grade? Thanks.
Oh, man. I think this is a good question. It's a tough question, though. So NBA, Mike Baker Authentication, or whatever it is, you've probably seen the little stickers. They're either silver or gold, and it looks like a little diamond on below the flip of a slab, but above the card. And so what people can do is they can take their slabbed cards and they can send them in to this company. And if they feel it's in the upper tier of that grade, as far as eye appeal is concerned, they'll put the gold or the silver sticker on it, depending on where it falls. If it's a really high, if it's like, man, this thing really seems undergraded. It's really like this guy thinks it's undergraded. Now, who is this guy? Who's Mike Baker? Now, he was a lead grader at PSA. He's a very polarizing figure. I have never met him. He was at the National. I walked right by him at the National, his booth. They were in the corporate area. I think the stickers are nice looking stickers for whatever that's worth. But I know there are a lot of people who have strong opinions for and against him. And I understand that. And I there was a dealer in Strongsville that's a guy who's very well connected to him, and a lot of his cards had the NBA stickers on them. And I think that, well, let me expand even more. So, and then, we have the PWCC eye appeal stickers that you've probably seen. And to some people, those matter as well. And, I have some cards. My Willie Keeler T206 portrait has a PWCC sticker on it, and it came with the little card and the stickers on the back. And if I'm being honest with you, I think when the card came and the little card, the PWCC I Appeal card was in there, I think I just threw it away because it didn't mean anything to me. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything, but it doesn't mean anything to me. I think what this is telling us, I think that it's bigger than is Mike Baker's company valid. Now, first of all, there's no doubt about it. Cards that have his sticker on it sell for more. And there's no doubt that cards that have the PWCC or whatever it is now sticker on it sell for more. But I don't think that it's because people like having a sticker on it. People are hungry for some form of differentiation. And the differentiation of, well, this is an 8 with the I Appeal sticker on it. So it must be better than an 8 that doesn't have an I Appeal sticker on it. It's marketing is what it is. It's marketing. You know, it's marketing. And some people are all about it and some people aren't. Have I ever submitted anything to any company for an I Appeal sticker? No. But seeing the dramatically different prices that cards sell for when they have that sticker, if I had a high-end card that was worth a lot of money and I was going to sell it and auction it off, I would certainly think about doing that because some people seem to care about it. And if some people seem to care about that differentiation and it adds value to a potential buyer, I could see doing it, but I don't plan on selling my high-end stuff, and I don't plan on going to these companies. As far as Mike Baker, the company and the individual, I don't know enough about him to have strong opinions. I know there are, again, people who have strong opinions, but I'm not that guy because I'm not going to share my thoughts on somebody who I don't know, and I'm not really that familiar with some of the controversy that some people feel exists there. So, but yeah, differentiation, and I think it also goes to show the importance, the growing importance of eye appeal with cards. People want cards with high eye appeal. I really believe that is growing in importance over the grade quickly. Just my take. If you all have a question for an upcoming episode, please do not hesitate to ask it down in the comments below. Thank you to everyone who submitted one this week.